For this week's teaching video, we are going to talk about how to shift from dropping demands in the moment to being proactive and shifting the whole scenario so that you don't have to drop demands in the moment at all. So first of all, what is dropping demands in the moment? So you know you're in the moment if you are, for example, it's time to go somewhere and your kid declares that they aren't going to wear shoes, and you insist that wearing shoes is a store rule, and they start to melt down. You're in the moment. Or let's say the table is set and everything is ready, and you call for them, okay, time for dinner, come on down. And they erupt and they lock themselves in their room and declare they are not coming down and that they're not going to eat anything you make. You're in the moment. So in the moment is any time that the demand has already come forward, it was too much for your child, and they have some sort of behavioral signal that says, I can't do this, it's too much for me. And at that point, you are faced with, well, what do I do? Because probably you brought that demand forward either unconsciously, like it's just for you a standard expectation that people eat at the table, or many of us here have already done a lot of those kinds of demand drops. So it might be a more subtle demand, like it's an expectation for you that after somebody hits, they go and say they're sorry. Or it's an expectation for you that when somebody comes downstairs in the morning that you greet them and say, good morning. So whatever the situation is, you issue a demand, and then your child responds with some kind of behavior that says, this is too much for me. And then you're in the moment. So in the moment demand drops are necessary because we cannot be proactive and we cannot anticipate everything. Any of you who've watched my day in the life videos know that we continue to see meltdowns and behaviors every single day. So this is a reality with our kids. We can certainly get to a point where they're more stable, where sometimes those meltdowns spread out and where we see less and less in the moment, but it's always going to be there. And also keep in mind that sometimes the demands aren't from you, they're not external, they're internal. Oh, your kid wants to beat this game and they really, really want to, but it's too hard for them, and then they melt down. So even if you are the most low demand and proactive parent in the world, you aren't going to be able to eliminate in the moment scenarios, because this is life and some things are too hard for our kids, and sometimes for our kids a lot of things are too hard for them. So in the moment, or you might consider this like a more reactive parenting, it feels like if you're in the moment over and over and over and over again, you're going to feel like you're drowning. You will feel like you are in the deep end. And low demand parenting says that when you're in the moment, you drop the demand because your child has already given you the signal that it's too hard. And so then you drop it, whatever it is, no matter how hard it is. Even if they hear the ice cream truck coming down the street and you say, no, we just got ice cream an hour ago, they give you a behavioral signal that says that is too hard for them. You drop it and you say, all right, let's go find that ice cream truck. I know some of you are in the mode where your kids are eating mostly popsicles. We're in that mode. So maybe they've already had their allotment of popsicles and they come up and say, I want another one. And you say, no, you've already eaten 5. And then they let you know, I have to have it. So you're in the moment. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells, if you feel like you are just dreading the next meltdown, if you feel like you don't know what to do next, like everything you try isn't working, you're probably living in the moment and you're probably dropping demands in the moment. So you may be dropping demands in the moment as well, because you're kind of mixed up about what you think and what your priorities are. It is important to you that somebody greet you in the morning, and it's coming out of a really loving place that your kid comes downstairs and you say, good morning. But that good morning is a demand for your child, and it may be too much for them to be greeted first thing in the morning. So You may have ambivalent feelings about dropping the demand because it's important to you, or it comes out of a deep-seated set of values, or maybe it comes out of your own trauma, something that you longed for as a child and now you're giving to your child and they don't want it, it's too much for them. Or perhaps it comes out of a sense of like, this is what good parents do. Good parents feed their kids meals at the table and make them eat healthy food because it's good for their bodies. And so it's coming from this really generous and loving place. So you have uncomfortable feelings about the idea of dropping it. So you continue to hold it halfway and expect this of your child, which is too hard for them, and you're in the moment. You might be stuck here because you jumped into low demand parenting recently or quickly, and there's still a lot of deeper work that needs to happen to unpack why these demands matter to you, what your need is, and to work all the way through the process so that you can meet your own need without making the demand of your child. You might be stuck here because it's hard for you to do this introspective work. If we're exhausted and not sleeping well or unsupported, or we haven't heard a lot of people around us modeling introspective work, it can be really, really hard. In all of those scenarios, you want to do it, but it's too hard for you. It might be that you're getting advice from a lot of different parenting experts or from family members who really matter to you, or you're reading books that have conflicting advice and you're just all mixed up. Like, oh, but if it's anxiety, I'm supposed to hold this line. I can't drop things or else it'll make the anxiety worse. Or kids need boundaries to feel safe, so I have to hold this and be their steady adult and then they can rail against it. No, you may have alternative theories of child development and of healthy families rattling around in your head, which keeps you in the moment because it's hard to proactively release these expectations. The last reason you might be in the moment may sound familiar to a lot of people, but your partner is not on board. And so every time you can't get agreed on what you're going to do, you have to continue to hold this expectation and then drop it when everything explodes in your face. What proactive parenting looks like. I'll give you an example. You dig deep and you discover that your fear and a reason for insisting on shoes is that you're really concerned that if your child goes to the grocery store in socks, they might slip and fall and they could get really hurt. And that you're afraid of public judgment in that setting of people commenting on your child's shoe choice. So you do your inner work and you're prepared with a set of scripts to advocate for your child. If somebody notices they're not wearing shoes, you are ready to say, this child can't wear shoes, but we have our feet covered, so we're safe. Or you might decide that you're okay with them wearing socks if they're the grippy socks, and that way they won't slip and fall. You could talk this through with your child, agree that grippy socks at the grocery store is a needed accommodation, that you're ready to defend it, and that it takes care of your deep concern about safety, and then you implement the plan. Grippy socks go on, grocery store trip, no battles. That's proactive parenting. So if you want to move from in the moment, reactive, to proactive parenting, here's a few steps to consider. First, you want to slow down and get specific. So if you're going to slow down, it means you need to choose one thing at a time and work your way all the way through it. You're going to create a scenario for the grocery store, not for everywhere you want to go, because you may have different concerns at the pool, at grandma's house, at the grocery store, at the trampoline park, at walking around the block. Each one of those may have different concerns for you, different needs, and different concerns for your child. So you're going to create specific plans for the things that really matter. The second thing is consider writing it down. Our brains are so busy with all the things, the therapy appointments and the judgment and the deep work we want to do and our partner's needs, and it rattles around in there and gets very confusing. Pull out a pen and paper and write it down. If you have the low demand course, print out the worksheets and write the demand and go through the questions of identifying the tiny demands that might be involved. Use the resources that you have. Step 3 is to listen deeply to yourself. Are you projecting into the future? Not, I'm worried that my kid will fall in the grocery store, but I'm worried if they don't learn how to put their shoes on now, then they're never going to be able to blah, 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 blah. That's projecting into the future. Are you trying to fix a problem that hasn't come up yet? Like, I need to get my kid wearing shoes because then they'll be ready for kindergarten when it comes. Well, kindergarten is a year away. You've got plenty of time to prepare for that. You don't have to fix a problem that's not even here yet. So you might ask, why does this matter to me? And why does that matter? And why does that matter? And why does that matter? Until you get to the stuff that zaps you in your tummy, usually pretty simple phrases that are going to represent what's really your deep why. And then step 4, you listen deeply to your child. Listen to what their words are and their behavior. What are they communicating specifically that's too hard about this demand? Because you may not have to drop everything. You may only need to drop something specific. Like with the popsicles example, it may be that your child is happy to eat healthier popsicles or homemade popsicles. And so you can only, you don't have to drop every single popsicle for all time where they're eating, dyes and full sugar. I mean, it's fine if you're doing that, but if that's your concern and you're really concerned about that, then fill your freezer full of popsicles that you can say yes to. And then drop the demand that there's only 5 a day and let them have as many as you want, where you know that it's meeting their need and it's not a concern for your child. They're fine to eat healthy popsicles. It just needs to be frozen and on a stick. Step 5, communicate that you're making a change. Let your child know that in the past, you have made them do all kinds of things that were too hard. You forced them to do things. You used your power over them. Whatever their language is that they shout at you when you're mad, mine says, you're forcing me. And so we began to use forcing as our family language because that's what resonates with my child. So I said, I know I've forced you to do things in the past, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And when I do, when you feel forced, you are free to tell me because I need to know. I can't always tell, but when you tell me, I promise I will drop it. I promise I will never force you. And then you got to hold to that. If they say it feels like you're forcing me, even if you didn't have any idea that that was a forcey type situation, you trust them and you drop it. Step 6 is follow through on your plan. If you agree that grippy socks are okay, then have those grippy socks in your hand. Instead of holding up the socks and shoes and saying it's time for the grocery store, hold up the grippy socks and say it's time for the grocery store. Show them that you mean it, that you are on board with this plan, that you are okay with it. If it's the popsicles, don't offer them carrots and chips and peanut butter, crackers and peanut butter first. Go ahead and offer them that popsicle and say, here, does this look good to you? Let them know that you're actually okay, that you fully dropped the demand and that they can have as many as they want. And then last, you learn and adapt. So if the plan is still making you feel uncomfortable, ask why does that matter and why does that matter and why does that matter and get to your deep why. If your child is still melting down, then that means something is still too hard for them. Become a detective. Ask what's too hard, what's too hard. Write it down, go back through the whole process and continue to adapt your plans. They may not be perfect the first time around because we have so many demands baked into our situations and our kids are sensitive to the very subtlest demands like our energy or the specific words we're using or how we walk in a room. Some of our kids are even melting down over looks. I don't like the way you looked at me. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to adapt. Give yourself grace to get it wrong and try again. And you can verbalize that to your child so that they know that you are committed, that you are in this with them, and that it's okay if it takes a little time.